Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Shaman John Rasmussen. We're here for another episode of Shaman Radio Presents with my good friend Peter Slaugh. And gosh, we go back many, many years, and I'm going to have Peter introduce himself. But Peter was gracious a number of years ago to allow me to videotape a session we did, a real full session, and I think it's kind of the only one I've ever done that with, and he was gracious enough to let me do that, um, and that's gotten 400,000 views total, and you know I thought to myself, some people might think it's a bunch of BS, and some people might love it, but it'll be great to hear from Peter how it actually may have done something for him. And so yeah, I wanted to welcome Peter, my good friend.
Thank you, John. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, tell us about yourself a little bit, what you want folks to know.
Yeah, I'll give you a little sort of high level overview of
Yeah.
who I am. So I live in Colorado. I'd lived in the Bay Area for 30 years. We made a move a couple years ago to a ranch in Colorado. Very different environment from restaurants and traffic and Bay Area and Truckee Tahoe to no traffic, no restaurants. Neighbors are 5 to 20 miles away, type of thing. So very different scene. But we're enjoying it thus far. It's right on the Gunnison River outside of Montrose, and just it's nature on steroids. So it's pretty inspiring that way. I currently run a real estate platform, investment platform, where we buy multifamily apartment units as well as industrial, mostly distribution warehouse type space. But the real story I think I'll touch on is really the business model we've adapted over the years, and in large part thanks to sort of early days with John. I'll just kind of launch in, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
This is what I want to talk about, how all this went
yeah.
down.
So I was part of a family business back in Pennsylvania, and in 2007 I moved back to the Bay Area where I'd lived after school, and family business did not turn out the way I had intended. Got into just a firefight with my dad, and just dynamics, family business dynamics were just were a lot, and we had very different opinions about sort of morals and direction and various business sort of practices and approaches. He was in the real estate business as well. But I jumped from residential sales into commercial lending. And at the time, I moved back out to the Bay Area in 2007, and I was a hot mess. I was just like I felt like the rug had been pulled, yanked from underneath me, and I was just scrambling to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do. And I knew I didn't want to get back into residential per se. I wanted to do something a little more sophisticated, which I landed as a lender within the commercial real estate asset class. So lending on all property types and whatnot. But one of the lenders we worked with had some kind of promotion where if you sourced a loan for them, they would send you anywhere in the country for kind of a hotel resort stay with your spouse. And I asked them, I said, hey, how about if I don't fly, but I stay at a very expensive place called the Post Ranch Inn, which is where I met John. And so, up until that point, I've been sort of dabbling in spirituality and was fascinated by, all sort of religious practices have some commonality where all roads sort of lead to the same place, just in a different way. And I was super intrigued with Native American teachings, but didn't know how to access it. I didn't know, where to find the guidance or the teachings or the lessons. And so I'm sitting in this fancy hotel room in Carmel, or Big Sur, west coast of California, and I'm reading through the menu of services for massages and spa treatments and whatnot. And there was I don't know if you remember, John, but there was a shaman treatment, of course, which was John, which was you. And I'm like, no way, this can't be legit. It's just, I'm at a hotel, and who's going to show up? In walks John with his rattles and his crystals, and blonde hair, blue-eyed, kind of surfer-looking guy, and I'm like, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. And so, if you remember, you did a chakra cleansing for me, and
Mhm.
so, and then you gave me a bit of homework, and I didn't really feel anything or know what it was really all about. But then you would come to the Bay Area and do sort of in-home visits and follow-ups. And so 2 weeks later, maybe I'm sorry, it's probably about a month or more later, we set up another session. And John got to my house and we went through sort of the similar protocols or practices. And I was like, John, what the hell did you do? Like, what is this all about? And because all of a sudden it was like all the stars were starting to align for me, where I was just like terrified of being able to pay the bills and unsure of my choices that I made in terms of getting into commercial real estate and the lending part of it in particular. And it was like click, 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 click. Like every star just started to align where I felt like I had total support, and I was seeing new business come in the door, and just things were starting to really come together for me in a pretty quick, expedited sort of fashion. So I started to ask more questions, and I'm like, what is this shamanic teaching anyway? And so that was really our start, and that was really, it was really a big pivotal sort of time frame for me, relative to what I'd sort of gone through traumatically with the family disruption and whatnot. So again, I was super curious. I'm like, hey, I don't know if this works or not, but it seems to be working.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because that's classic. I mean, the most of the time I'll do sessions and I might hear from someone a year later going, wow, everything changed and stuff like that. But a lot of times people don't bother, why bother to get back, and it is powerful work. There's a certain amount of obviously homework. People got to do their work afterwards, and they got to do the psycho spiritual work, and they got to do the physical work. And you mentioned religion. One of the things I really appreciate about both of us, I think where we really resonate is that we're not well, we're bridge builders, right? We're not interested in preaching to the choir, so to speak. Why bother? And so, I always say that, hey, if someone's got a good religion and it's healing their soul, and it's doing the job, you don't need to call me. It's all good, like you got it. You go.
Yeah.
Um and but a lot of folks really don't have anything like that, aren't interested in something like that, but still want powerful work. And I think it's always been good to sort of reach those people and get the kind of results you're talking about, right? And I mean, in the end, and I want to know more about, obviously there was a shift in the way you approach your business, having learned all this stuff. And I think you came to Peru as well at some point
I
with
did.
me. And, you know, it's how, we bridge all these different worlds so that not only is it like good for people's quality of life, right? But I really realize this, like the whole purpose, whether it's a religion or anybody who does work similar to this or within a religion, it's the well-being of the souls of people. Life can deal you all kinds of pain and all kinds of problems, right? But in the long run, if your soul is strong, if it's whole, if you're free and in your power and can avoid negative influences, whether they're physical or non-physical, just practice good discernment, right? Stay away from the bad deals and and align with the good deals and good folks. Um, that's as good as it gets. That's like heaven on earth, and one thing I always love about you, you inspired me because, man, you you just like you eat up life. Like I always thought I'd lived 3 lifetimes when I was young. I did everything I could possibly do. And then I met you and I'm like, wait a second, you got motorbikes and airplanes and like you don't stop. Like you just live. And I think that's food for the soul. Like that's the whole point. People
Yeah.
people gotta take life, right?
Yeah.
Because that like you were experiencing shamans say, death isn't something that happens instantly through a bug or an accident or old age or something. It's something that takes your soul little by little until you're more dead than alive, and you may have not had the courtesy of disposing of your body. So,
Yeah.
one of the big
Yeah.
secrets you hold is that you don't let that death stalk you. You keep going after life, and I really use that as an inspiration for me.
Well, I appreciate that. It's not without its challenges. I do love the metaphor of the river. I mean,
Yeah.
we're in the flow, and sometimes the flow is not so comfortable. Sometimes it's choppy and it's white water and pretty terrifying, and other times you're stuck in eddies and I think one soundbite I had learned a long time ago. Was that the more you reach for the bank to slow it down, to stop it, the more you're going to scrape up your arms and mangle yourself. You just can't, there is a greater flow moving all around us at any given time. And trying to recognize and be aware of that is more helpful than resisting it and fighting it off. When I first started doing this work, and we did go to the jungle, that was quite the experience for me. And I always say I left my fear in the jungle because I had
Right.
lived for so many years just like terrified and insecure and unsure of how to be socially normal or whatever, because my mind was always racing, trying to, outmaneuver whatever I thought I was up against. But it was all fear based. And so for the first time in my life, I was without fear. I remember coming back to the Bay Area and I fired like all of our clients because they were just toxic. And at that point, we were doing debt originations for commercial real estate developers. And while that seemed like just the opposite of what I should do, it was absolutely what I needed to do. And it just like freed up our team to be more relaxed. And sure enough, good people filled in the gaps, and we had a different sort of experience going forward. And I do attribute that to sort of letting go of fear of the jungle and really trusting the flow. And it easier said than done, but making bold moves and committing to a spiritual practice was what really helped me in a lot of ways. And then there was a little bit of downside to all this because for a while it really bonded myself and my wife and my family. And then we lived in a pretty expensive zip code in Marin County at north of San Francisco. And so I kept getting more and more quiet and still, stillness in flight, so to speak. And so eventually that started to really create a wedge between myself and my wife because she wanted the old way, which was, crazy partying days and socializing. And, if you invite one guest for dinner, you have to invite 20 others because you can't leave anybody out. And I was just like over it. I'm like, I need to put the brakes on and slow down. And so ultimately that was the demise of our relationship, which wasn't a bad thing as it turns out either. So that, we all go through these chapters, these cycles, the ebb and flow back to the river, and, just trying to maintain awareness around where you're at and what's around you has always been my go-to in the struggles and the good times. So, and,
Yeah.
my trajectory has not been without struggle. There's been plenty of challenges. Hasn't been all roses and cakewalk easy times. It's, there's been some stuff. And so this practice has really helped me to maintain sort of that cadence and just peace of mind, staying grounded. But it's also given me a lot of courage to try new things and be out of the box and try and figure out different ways to do things. And we'll talk a little bit about how my business model evolved as a result. But it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I really observed about you, particularly in the jungle, that I appreciated, is that your ability to stay present at whatever was going on, no matter how challenging. You were taking notes. You were literally, I looked over at you and you were writing stuff down, planning and like figuring stuff out. And I was like, that is truly amazing. Cause that, like, as you say, like you're going down the river, where it started and where it ends are kind of the mystery, right? This is God, right? This is God's will. Like, we don't know the full picture. I think it's impossible to know that. And, you know, and yet while you're in that present moment in that part of the river, you have the ability to stay present, observe what's going on, notice where the crags and the rocks and are like 10 feet ahead of you and avoid them as much as possible. But you have to be observant. You have to be present, and you have to be it's like the difference between, in like my Catholic faith, right? It's like you've got the ones who just show up and do what they're told, not sure why, just go through the motions so that, you stay you stay good. And then there's the Gnostics, right? There's the ones who go read all the Gnostic gospels and study and go into depth and really figure out what's going on here. I'm that way, but it's
Hmm.
rare. You're that way about all of life. Like you literally, from my perspective, are piecing together patterns, figuring stuff out, trying to understand how I can use this in this part of my life. And I think that's something that people could really learn, because we can all be in the same river, all be going down the same rapids, all be feeling the same pain of the rocks scraping on us or whatever. The
Yeah.
difference is are you thinking like you do, what can I do with this? What's next? How do I mean, tell me if that's true, if that tracking about
Well,
you is right.
you're giving me a lot of credit. I'm a perfectly flawed individual like everybody else. So let's just start there and be honest about it.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not trying to make you a saint, but like I
Yeah,
think
not at
about the
all.
story of the baboons, or I don't know if you want to share that,
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah, I'll get into that.
yeah, okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it turns out we do have the capacity to maneuver within the flow.
Yeah.
We can't overpower it, but I always relate it to, like, remember Stuart Little, the childhood book
Yeah.
that had so he had this little mouse critter that had the canoe, and so we're all like in these little micro mini canoes in the river of life, and yeah, you've got some capability or capacity to create some inputs and paddle around and kind of go from one side of the river to the other and maybe hold up a little bit. Again, I love this metaphor because it describes life so well.
Yeah.
So to the extent that you can co-create and work with the flow versus against it, and you're never gonna conquer the flow. Trust me. I mean, I think everybody probably realizes that. But you do get to have some inputs, and you get to co-create and be your own map maker and go for it. Things are going to change, of course. So that's part of the awareness that you have to try some things and put some effort into different directions or manifest your visions and your hopes and your aspirations, and shoot for the best, right? I mean, you might
Mhm.
line up a class 5 rapid and have a perfectly good plan, but like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the nose, right? So
Right. Right.
um, so there's a lot of that goes on, and but you try and adapt. So kind of backing up a little bit chronologically. Um, so I had a couple years of a lot deeper thinking and appreciation for all of this, and yet I was still in this very institutionalized world of finance and buying investment properties with investors, and it's all about the spreadsheets, it's all about the returns. And after a couple years, I got a little fried. I'm like, this buy low, sell high thesis only gets you so far, and spreadsheets are two-dimensional, yet we're living in a three-dimensional world. Uh, and so during 2009, during the Great Recession, walking around properties that we owned in Salt Lake in particular, and jobs were scarce, residents were suffering, and my whole business was built on you know again, buy a property, increase rents, create value, and then sell to the market and build profits and returns for investors. But the business model is entirely based on a resident's ability to pay rent. And so if they're suffering, the whole
Right.
thing's going to crumble, right? So you better take care of the core of your business investment. And I think most multifamily operators in the country um, kind of miss that part because they're so
Amazing.
spreadsheet
Yeah.
driven. And so it's like if you don't take care of your customers, you're not going to have a business. And so during 2009, my marriage was on the rocks. So it was a there was some stuff going on for me. Thought about moving to New Zealand and taking a break from the U.S. as it was starting to falter. But I actually attended. I don't know if you remember this, but Janine Banyus with the Biomimicry Institute was
Right.
speaking in
That's right.
Sausalito
Good
at a
stuff.
at a
Yeah.
yeah. And she talked all about how we borrow from nature or look to nature for inspiration and how we run our conventional businesses. And I was just like blown away by this speech. I'm like, God, we got all and back up for 1 second. My question to myself as I'm walking properties and the vibe is super low and people are really struggling. I'm like, what do we do to help? I mean, this isn't just about returns. It obviously that was part of my perspective or my lens, but what do we really do to help our residents become more resilient in these times? So you could not raise rents. Again, jobs are scarce and people are scraping by. And so anyway, flash forward, I go to this symposium in Sausalito, California. Janine's talking about how you look to nature for inspiration, whether it's the humpback whale that has a bumpy membrane on its fins that helps its glide coefficient. And so she's talking about how Boeing is looking into wrapping their wings in some kind of bumpy membrane to capture more fuel efficiency. Like there's a good example of how nature figures some stuff
Right.
out and you can apply
Right.
it to everyday sort of practices. Or how does nature do color? Nature doesn't dump a bunch of toxic paint into it. It has refractory qualities within, like a hummingbird's wing or something. So
Right.
looking for other ways. How does nature create lighting and just all this great stuff? So I'm so excited about this concept, and I email the info at biomimicry.com or .org, whatever they were. And I'm like, hey, I got all these properties that were, if any of your followers or your clients or anybody wants to experiment at our properties, I'm totally game. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm not sure. So it's crickets. I don't hear back from this group, all summer long. And they finally, I was on vacation with the family, and I got an email saying, "Hey, so sorry, we never checked the info at email, but if we're so excited that you love our group and what we're up to, we're doing a trip in Costa Rica because the South African trip is all booked this fall, but you can come to Costa Rica like 6-9 months from now." And I'm like, I've been to Costa Rica, I don't want to go, but if anybody drops out of South Africa, I'm in last minute. So sure enough, a couple months later, I get an invite to come. And so
Amazing.
she held a class. It was great. She held a class on this preserve, and it was all about teaching in the morning where she would talk about these principles, and then we'd go out in the field and kind of look at what the examples really were, like how the ant hill is self-cooling, and it
Mm.
also is symbiotic because the birds are feeding off the dirt and the nutrients that the ants are bringing up to the top. So it's like all about this ecosystem of support. And that one of the takeaways was, we generally don't create like ecosystem solutions. And what I mean by that is like we might come up with the electric car, which has better fuel efficiency, but nobody knows how to dispose of these batteries. So we just, we're good at one part of the supply chain, but then we could be super destructive on the back end and not know how to deal with it. So
Mm.
it's super fascinating. Now it's day 3, day 2. I'm really jet lagged, and I'm like, I got to take a break, just period. And so I talked to one of the guides because we were staying at this outpost on this big, I don't know, it's several thousand acre kind of preserve with all kinds of animals. So we're getting into the baboon story now. So um, I'm like, I'm going to cut class and I'm just going to go for a walk. And so, I remember some of the other participants were like, how could you come all this way and blow off class and go for a hike? I'm like, how could you not go for a hike in this amazing land?
Right. There you go.
So I took a little me time and
Awesome.
ditched the group. And I'm climbing, climbing, climbing in the morning, and the sun's just getting up after, an hour or so. And I look down in this valley, and I see all these little black, brown dots scurrying around the valley floor, just doing stuff. And what I realized was it was a baboon troop. And so the baboon troop was getting ready for the day for their foraging, but they were also communicating with other troops. So you'd hear them bark their call back and forth, and what they were really doing was planning where they were going to sort of move that day. And they kind of did it in different masses of troops. They just weren't directly connected, but they moved as a group, which was kind of cool.
Amazing.
And so
Wow.
I'm looking down after hearing these baboon calls, and I'm far enough away where I'm not even close, but I could see them pretty clearly what they were up to. And so I give my best baboon call down to the valley, and all of a
Of course you
sudden,
do.
yeah,
Like,
all of a
let's
sudden
see what happens.
these
Oh my
hundred little
God.
dots all freeze, and then they organize, and then they start funneling out of the valley. I'm like, oh my God, I just disrupted this whole morning routine. Because I'm this
You
jerk
gave
up
us a
on the
different set of
mountainside.
instructions.
Yeah,
Oh
they're
no.
like, who's speaking French? Well, we're speaking Baboon. So I'm like amazed, and I also felt bad. Um, and then so I'm just standing there, scratching my head, and all of a sudden I see this lone baboon climb a tree, scout around, like looking around like this. He would bark something, and then he'd be back down the tree. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like there's one lone guy hanging out, just behind the troop. And
The
then the
freaking
next
king of
time,
the baboons,
yeah,
basically.
well, he was a scout, and so the next thing
Ugh.
I realized he had closed the distance between us by half, and I'm like, oh
Whoa.
wow, he's getting kind of close. Like this is interesting. Like he's kind of making his way up the hill, and he'd scout around, look, and then he'd yell something, and then he'd be back down the tree and disappear for another 5 minutes. And so the final time, he did this like 3 or 4 times, and the fourth time, he's not that far away from me, but he's downgrade, and so he's lower elevation, and he's like squinting around, looking into the sun. I got the sun to my back, and it's almost like he's doing one of these things,
Right.
and 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 for some dumb reason, I pick up my hand. I'm like, "Hey, right here," and he
Oh
does a
yeah.
double take, does a double take, shouts something to the rest of the troops, and then disappears. I'm like, oh shit. I don't know what he's seen me, and the reason he couldn't see me was because
Right.
my
That's
backdrop
the
was white to gray, and I was wearing a white T-shirt and gray shorts, so I was totally camouflaged until I waved at him. So all of a sudden, like, okay, I hear baboons are pretty strong. I don't think I can outrun them. I don't think I can fight them. So I'm like, I'm out of here. And so I go scrambling down a different direction down in the valley, like for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm being hunted for real. And so I'm just like over
amazing.
logs, under trees, like through all this bramble brush, scraping myself up. I'm like, I'm running for a good 20 minutes, and I have to go back down through the same valley, and so that was kind of daunting. But then I stumble out into a meadow, and I'm nose to nose with a giraffe with his head in the ground eating grass. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? And part of my practice was I always carry crystals with me, and so I did this thing where I backed up 2 steps, and the giraffe backed up 2 steps. I stepped forward 2 steps, he stepped back, and then I stepped back, and he stepped forward. So we started to get into this rhythm of a dance. And so I hold up this big crystal, and he's like really curious. And giraffes don't really hear; they just sense vibration. And so
Wow.
I started to
I
hum
didn't
with
know
this
that.
crystal, and I know this is wacky, but it was what I was up to at the time. And then all of a sudden, I turn my shoulder to him. I'm like, "Hey, come on!" And so we start walking down in parallel down through this valley, and going for a walk with the giraffe. I was like, "This is crazy." And so he starts to pick up speed, and if you've ever seen a giraffe run, it's a very
Yeah.
slow motion lope, and they cover a
Right.
lot of ground. So I'm like, this is amazing. I'd forgotten all about the baboons. I'm like, everything's good. And so I get back to our little cabins, and one of the guides came back. He's like, all good? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm good. I'm great. He's like, okay, well, when you're ready to join the group at dinner, here's the shortcut back to where, the feeding hall or whatever. And so I go back, and that's where I got a bunch of shit from everybody, where it's like, how could you cut class? I'm like, how could you not cut class? And so anyway, flash forward. The whole point of the retreat was learning to borrow ideas from nature to implement for practical business purposes. And so we were given a design challenge, and some people were given a challenge like, how do you create clean drinking water in South Africa? How do you create natural lighting in office environments? And so like sea anemone kind of things where they pull light from the surface. And so people had all these different ideas. Our design challenge was the biomimicry.org was always in competition with biomimicry.com, the same company, but one was a consultant that was earning profits based on the intellectual property of the nonprofit. So there's a lot of dysfunction, and because one group was making money and the other was not, and they were a mess from a org chart standpoint. So I immediately get to work and I start creating these org charts to figure out how to cross incentivize and include the nonprofit with the for-profit and sort of align their interests. And so one of the instructors walking behind me, she's like, "Peter, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm org charting your mess, basically. I'm going to fix this thing," just kind of going back to simple business
Amazing.
practices, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, no, Peter." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "What would nature do?" And I'm like, "Oh, right. That's why we're here." And so I'm like, you know what? And we did have access to the internet to kind of do a little research. I'm like, the
Right.
baboons are an incredible example of how community works or a business environment could work, where you have very clear roles and responsibilities. Like the scout that was coming after me, he was later,
Right.
he was definitely later rewarded by the female baboons that night with tick picking and was regarded as a hero. And then, so I started borrowing all these examples from the baboons to help,
Amazing.
rebuild this business. And it was all about communication. The baboons have like a 70 word language, it turns out. And it was all about incentives and roles and responsibilities and clearly aligning the whole troop so that they were healthy as one unit. And so I get up to do my presentation, and I lay out this baboon sort of architecture for their business. And it was like, the guy who cut class actually aced the exam. It was like perfect, right? I'd gotten the whole message in one
Amazing.
experience during that day. So that was a fantastic trip. And then I get back to the US, and, months go by. I was so inspired by all this stuff, but I had no idea where to apply it. And, because we don't manufacture a product. We don't really have a business process like that. But I'm like, you know what? We have a community problem. We have residents that could be anywhere from 100 residents to 1,000 residents living at individual properties depending on the size of the property. But it's like they're all sharing walls but not sharing lives. And so I'm like, oh my God, the baboons. We have a people problem. We have a community problem. And what did the baboons teach me so well? And that was like how to bring real community-based programming into our properties. And so that light bulb moment for me changed our total business plan of how we approached what we were doing. Not only did it do that, but it also started to feed my soul in terms of the big why. Like, why were we doing this? Life can't be just about chasing dollars. There's got to be more substance and more soul-filling sort of purpose
Right.
to what you do. And so we started off in this grand experiment, and we launched a pilot program called Urban Village in Provo, Utah. And again, the market was, jobs were scarce, residents were suffering, properties were not cash flowing that well. So in a business where on average, there's 65% turnover each year, that's a heavy turnover per property. And so we stood back. I got a guy from Marin to kind of help me organize this. And we just decided to do this social experiment with no financial agenda whatsoever. It was just about taking care of residents and trying to be a steward of not only the land, but also the community. And so this property, and I'll tell a quick story about that in a second, but this property was, running decent occupancy but, a lot of expenses and whatnot. And so we kind of introduced what we wanted to do, and it really was social events and how to rebuild community or how to get community started. And so we let the residents lead what they wanted. We didn't want to be a top-down, we know it all, we know what's best for our residents. We let them kind of inform us. And so we kind of stood back. We had a big meeting at the property, And we said, we're going to provide a little bit of money for food, for gatherings and whatnot, but we'll let you guys decide how you want to spend your money and spend your time. And so we had barbecues, karaoke nights, cooking classes, community gardens, babysitting, workout groups. Like all of a sudden, this property, I equate it to the moment when Dorothy lands in the Munchkin land, and it goes from
Right.
black and white to color. And so all of a sudden, this property had color, and it was
Amazing.
like Technicolor, and it was just like it was beaming. And I remember I was still, so I've always tried to walk with a foot in both worlds. But
Yeah.
I walked
Yeah.
on the property one time. I showed up, and there's flowers hanging over the eave of every front door. And I march into the office. I'm like, "Who paid for the flowers? Like, what? I didn't approve that." It's still two-dimensional thinking, right? I still have my spreadsheet in my mind. And the manager goes, "No, no, no. The residents are competing for the best front door. That's their own dime. They're just so into it." And so the light
Wow.
bulb moment went off. And then 9 months after we started this whole experiment, um, this one property in our portfolio was gushing cash. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like rents hadn't changed, but what had
Wow.
happened, yeah, so there's a little hidden upside that we'd never intended.
Good
And
Lord.
so rents were still flat, but we were 100% occupied. We had a waiting list for folks who wanted to live there. Nobody was leaving. And so there's your 65% annual turnover that just got turned off. And so we didn't have
Wow.
countertops, paint, carpet, appliances, all that wear and tear turnover costs just it disappeared. We had no advertising expenses. And it was just like, wow, we just hit like the mother of all impact models that we never intended to do. And, and
Right.
back then, we didn't know the word impact. We didn't know triple bottom line. We didn't know any of these like catchphrases for conscious capital, all this stuff. We just set out to do the right thing by asking the question of what do
Yeah.
we do to help? And so
Amazing.
that
Amazing.
shifted our business model. It shifted our culture. It shifted our mission and aligned our team members where it's like it feels so good. We have so many residents that write us happy thank you notes, which
Mm.
is very different than the industry by and large.
Yeah. Right.
So
Jeez.
we had to, so flash forward, my company was never going to be big enough to impact enough people or
Okay.
residents. So we
Right.
formed a property management company that could serve other owners as well. And so I'm proud to say that we now have about 16,000 units under management, and we have like, I don't
Wow.
know, 110 properties across the country, all with this backbone of impact at the core of what we do and how we do it. And so
Hmm.
that, to me, if you have 16,000 units, just double it for a resident because it could be more or less, 1 to 2 to 3 or 4 per apartment. So let's just say it's double. So that's 32,000 people that we get to impact and have the opportunity to really make a difference in their lives. So
That's
that,
huge. I mean, it's amazing. And it started, what, 17 years ago, roughly?
yes, yes, yeah,
So, people should understand, things take time, right? It's
they
like
take
you got a great idea, but it's like
yeah,
it takes time to turn the ship, right?
yeah,
And people got to hang in there, and they got to have faith, and they got to wait and hope and keep working. Like I'm sure, you've been, you could tell us, but like you've been through periods where, you know, it's not all roses, it's not a straight up, right? There's times when you go down again and you got to get up, and how did you get through those periods? Like, how did you manage for to get to this point after that initial realization, right? The one person in the whole industry that had a realization like that.
yeah,
How did you deal with being the only one that saw this, basically?
yeah. Well, it's so interesting how uh, the corporate world has kind of come and gone with impact and ESG and different flavors of trying to do the right thing. And my own energy levels have ebbed and flowed over time. And the apartment business is tough, and costs are back. They're escalating with insurance costs, or they're escalating with
Mhm.
frivolous lawsuits and different challenges within the business. And especially today, like, we're in this environment where it's not just show up, have a plan, have a vision, and have a good heart about where you want to go with things. We're so bombarded with so many different macroeconomic variables and social variables, and it is nuts trying to run a business right now, because it's just not as simple as it used to be. There's just still,
Int-
now we're doing, now we're working with 5-dimensional Rubik's cubes, and it's like, wow, didn't see that coming.
wow.
And so,
Yeah.
the truth of it is, it takes a lot of grind and a lot of grit and a lot of work. And yet I've even lost my way along the way, where it's like, oh, well, we did extremely well with selling a bunch of apartment deals through the teens, and now we're back to a really harsh environment, and I'm just like, I'm exhausted. Yet where I get inspired is when I come back to my roots of this urban village concept and our property management company, which is carrying the flag. I've got a great, it's an all women led company now. I'm just
Mm,
like the quiet guy in the corner trying to
that's great.
provide ideas and guidance and direction, but they're doing the heavy lift. And so I give all the credit to my team, who's really kind of carried the flag, and they're convincing other owners that this is the best way to take care of their residents and their business model, which I mentioned earlier. Like, if you have
Right.
everybody suffering, you're just not going to have a great outcome. So it's important to kind of embody this and stick to it. And again, I've found my way in and out of, like, being really excited about it to being a little bit fried, a little burnout. I'm back to being re-inspired, knowing that it's more than ever this business model is needed, and more than ever, if I think it's 40% of the population is a renter household, and the rest are homeowners, and that number changes all the time. But that's a big chunk of the U.S. population, and not all people are created equal. I mean, some are well off and they're renters by choice, but most are renters
Right.
by
Right.
necessity. And
Yeah.
it's really that renter by necessity that we have, I believe, a moral obligation to serve and to make sure, like Urban Village as the program, we now bring all kinds of goods and services into our properties, for food relief or transportation or health. We do haircuts, we do job fairs, like
Amazing.
all
Wow. That's
all this
great.
stuff. We have a big audacious goal, which is, if we can achieve a net zero rent environment, that would be the coup de grace, the ultimate sort of accomplishment. And what I mean by that is, if you're spending, let's call it $1,200 on rent, if we can
Mhm.
find you $1,200 in savings, then that's my theory, is that you're living there for free. It's a net zero.
That's
So that,
amazing. I mean, that's good overall systems thinking right there, right?
yeah,
Like you're
I don't know if we'll
people
ever
don't
get
think that
there
way.
per se, but we're sure going to try, and that's what drives us to keep refining and figuring out what actually works at the property. I mean, we do bees, we do gardens, we do all kinds of
Yeah.
crazy stuff. It's just a fun way to run a business, and it really is a great culture building kind of mission that helps too.
How can more people get involved, learn more, contact you, work for you, at, get under your umbrella? Like, what? Give us the like, because this. I mean, this is huge. This should be global, in my opinion. Like, this is a big deal, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's smart. I mean, in my opinion, there could be like policy around this. Like there's a lot of things that this could still like. It's still this big, and it could go.
it's huge.
But you're gonna
Yeah,
need help. You need you need fresh blood, and
yeah.
how can people do that? How do they learn more?
Well, just think about our ecosystem. So, getting a job with us is one thing. And, I'll give
Mhm.
everybody my email. It's peter@openpathinvestments.com.
Okay,
But
I'll
I
put that
think,
in the thing.
the bigger driver for me is attracting more and more capital into this space with this mission in mind. And trust me, this isn't at the cost of returns. I'll argue all day long that enhances your returns and makes a return on your investment more resilient, just because you have a stronger foundation at the property levels. So I think capital is important. I think other property owners that want to embrace this as well,
Mhm.
we would be glad to talk to you. Uh,
Right.
you know, The first 5 years, we're now 6 into it as far as a company. We used a prior management company to do this, and we would just run a program alongside them. We were constantly hitting a glass ceiling with them. They just did not care about our program, and they tell us one thing, we'd show up at the property, and other things were happening that weren't good. So we had to do it. We had to take it in house to do it ourselves to really ensure that the quality was there. So I
Right.
think it's a function of capital with like-minded investors that want to see their money not only earn a return but also hit social and environmental returns as well. Those are important to me. And then other property owners, like, wake up, guys. Like, the hospitality industry is such a good example. Like, you can't berate your customers and expect them to come back. And
Totally. Totally.
that unfortunately is how a lot of property owners and property management companies run multifamily housing where people live. These are people's lives. And if you take care of them, just like a hotel, if you take care of your guests, they're going to be repeat customers. And so it's that simple. And what comes out of it, it can get a lot more complex, but stick to this simple sort of mission and thesis, and doing well by doing good. I mean, we've heard that a million times, right? But it's true.
Mhm.
And so I think in this time where there's so much knee on the neck pressure from different directions, I don't care which side of the fence you're on or the aisle you're on politically, it's just, this is us. This is our country, our population. And the village concept is older than dirt. It takes a village, right? It's just there.
Right, yeah, we're not, like, reinventing the wheel here.
Not at all, but
Necessarily,
again,
yeah.
collectively, we've lost our
God.
way over the years in terms of how we view, what the bottom line looks like and how to get
Ye
there. And having something with purpose and with mission aligned sort of direction, I think that's really critical to helping people get through whatever this goofy way
Yeah,
is
and
we're in.
like you say, your returns aren't suffering. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You do the right thing, you make people harmonious and feel good. I've been a renter my whole life, I still am, and, I have a good relationship with my landlord or whatever, and, you know, if, if there's some little thing I can fix or I can pay for, I just do. I don't bother to, like, collect from them, like it.
Yeah.
And then when they need I need a break, they give me a break, so it's just
Mhm.
it's harmony, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, I just think and also, I mean, isn't it true? You're obviously more involved. I'm somewhat on the side interested in everything in the world because it's my village
Yeah.
and I have to be. But it's like, I've heard, some of the astrologists and some of the obvious, like, technical analysis and all this stuff that we might be, we might have a few good years now of, like, a booming economy, and then, like, 2028, 29, we might go through a more severe, maybe even depression, at least another great recession or this type of thing.
Yeah.
And you don't want your money in the stock market at that point. Like, you're gonna lose 10, 20, 30%. It's typically real estate is smart, right? Harder assets. Like, if
Yeah.
somebody was involved in, is that true? Would you say that, if you're thinking of where to put some money in the next few years, 3 to 5 years, uh, it seems to me that's a pretty cool thing to do with it, not only for your return, but for doing good in the world and helping people out, especially in those times, like you said, where then the community's really struggling. I
Yeah.
mean, like, tell me if that's true or if whatever.
Well, that's certainly my direction and my belief, and I don't know where what's around the corner of the next bend of the
Yeah,
river, but
nobody does. Yeah.
I think sticking to your heart and trying to find your way back to sort of having real purpose in your life, and serving, just trust the flow, but be of service, and park your bets if you're investing in areas you believe in. I equate the stock market to white sugar. It's a sugar high, right? And it will definitely crash and leave you. It has that. Not to say real estate doesn't have risk too, because it does. But I will say hard assets like real estate are a good alternative to, balancing out your portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I've seen, over the years, 30 years at doing what I've been doing with clients from all over the world, there is that type, and it's kind of what you were describing is the people that just think, I'm gonna just I'm going to make a ton of money and then I'll go out and do good with it.
Right,
Then I'll be a
right.
philanthropist. You know,
Yeah, once I have
number
mine.
one,
Yeah,
are they still sane by the time that happens? Number two, are they,
right,
alive?
right.
Um, Number three, a lot of things in their life suffered soul level wise, right?
Yeah,
Just mental attitude, from that approach. And I just love that you realize, and I wish, a lot of people would get this, that start now, start doing the right thing, contributing, finding ways to do business and be profitable the way you have. And that'll last the rest of your life, and you'll be healthier, and you'll be mentally healthier, and you'll do better. You'll do more than just waiting till you got the billion and then giving half of it away to a program.
right.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's first off, way off in the future. We got to do it now. Like
yeah,
people are suffering now. Like let's figure out a way to do this. I love it. I just wish, I mean, I've known you a long time, and I'm not, I don't get biased anyway. It's not what I do, but it's like, I don't know how anyone could listen to what your story, your talk, your approach, your success, and not figure out that, um, they ought to, find a way to do it in whatever business they're in. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do this in everything, right? Not just real estate, but probably
sure.
just about everything. Like I would love to see you, you're probably already doing a bunch of this, but advising and you know, uh consulting and giving talks, and like this is good stuff. And I think it's only going to get more disruptive. You got AI, you got all these things
Yeah,
coming, right? That are,
yeah,
the world is changing rapidly, bigger than the previous industrial revolution. Like we're going to have to figure out a new way. And I think you've been leading it. You figured it out a long time, and you and I are the kind that figured things out 15 years ahead of anyone else, typically because of just that looking out, looking outside the norms and doing what everyone else won't do, you know, like taking off in the middle of class and climbing a
right.
hill and calling out
Yeah,
to baboons. I mean, that's,
right.
that's,
Not a normal
that's,
day.
wild and fun. But, um, so, eventually people kind of catch up, but I think we're at a critical juncture, don't you think? I mean,
You do. I sure
I mean,
do.
luckily you're in the kind of business AI is not going to like take away necessarily, but a lot
I
are.
don't know. I don't know. I think the trades are gonna do fine. You can't replace the
Mhm.
plumber, electrician, the
Right.
contractors very readily. I think the factory automation is gonna be a threat to, if let's say we have a building next to Amazon. I mean, where are those residents gonna work, right? So that to me is a systemic threat to the everyday livelihood of blue collar labor. But I think the trades are where it's at with the hands-on stuff that won't get replaced anytime soon. So you're going to have this huge K-shape of the have and have-nots, and I think AI
Yeah.
is going to make that really. It's going to shape it pretty dramatically.
Well, I challenge you to sit down and do the same thing you did, at that class, right? Took
Yeah,
their organization and reorged it and made sure. I think it'd be really interesting for you to look at what's coming or what's already here, basically
yeah,
in that regard, and figure out a way to make it work, right? I mean, remember, was it Andrew Yang, the guy who ran for president from Silicon Valley a
oh yeah,
couple of couple runs ago, and he's like, "Hey, we need a universal basic, income. Everyone should
yeah,
get, 5 grand a month, and then figure out what you're gonna do."
yeah,
It almost seems like we're at that point where that might start to have to be part of the solution if so
yeah.
many people are disrupted, at least
Could
for a
be.
little while.
I do know that for personal happiness that most people need some kind of purpose,
You
right?
got to be contributing, right? So that's an issue. That's why that just you can't just pay people to sit around. So this is
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like I think you're beautifully suited if you want a new project
Yeah. Thanks.
to do the Peter do your approach to solving this massive industrial revolution problem.
We'll see. Every day's a new day. Every hour is a new hour at this point. So
Yeah,
we're it's hand to hand combat in this current market.
it is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's a lot. I think it's a lot for anybody. I'm actually trying to read fewer headlines. I just can't take the toxicity of it and the rinse repeat kind of process that's going
Yeah,
on.
no, it's so true. I've been doing the same thing, and like I said, I think we're going to get a little bit of a respite. I think we're going to get, you know, um, a couple of years here at least, if not a few, where things kind of start getting a little easier, a little better. I don't know why, I don't know how. I'm a big fan of these cycles
Yeah.
and a big fan of astrology and all this stuff, as you know. And I think we may get a little break here, and we ought to but we should be doing something with that. Like we can't just
Yeah.
rest on it.
What's your I tell kids, what's your AI strategy?
Right. Right. What's
Either
your
either
yes?
proactive or defensive. What is your AI strategy? Start thinking about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally. You got to be on it. Like I reluctantly have, dove in and have been using it and getting familiar with it at least, because I don't know. I never know why. Half the time, I don't know why I get into things until later. I'm a little slow on the uptake. But I get into it nonetheless. And then I later realize that was probably a good idea, you
Yeah.
know, or at least I can share it with people. But yeah, that's genius. I mean, you got to figure it out how you live with it.
Yeah. Yep.
Amazing. Well,
So
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
sure, happy to share. Whatever I can do, my little part to keep spreading the good word and make sure people get back to basics, and take care of one another.
Yeah. Well, like I said, bridging, walking between the worlds, bridging. That's like, I don't care if you're, living in Big Sur out in the mountains and, uh, drinking green juice, or you're running a multinational corporation. We're all humans. We're all the same. We're all Homo
Yeah,
sapiens. We're all baboons, basically, on
right, right.
one level. And, and we're all going to be doing the things we do. We're all contributing in our own way to the village. And I don't believe in judging. I believe in just figuring out what that is for you and celebrating what everyone else is doing. I celebrate what you do. I celebrate what what a lot of people are trying to do at these high levels of business and
Yeah,
finance and the world. And they, as humans, will come to their own conclusions, a lot like you did, just way ahead of the pack, I believe, and figure it out. But it's not if we isolate. We have to have bridges. We have to introduce these ideas. We have to share our stories to inspire others, and
yeah,
nobody's above anyone else. And so I just believe that you got to stay engaged, with the global community at this point. And so yeah, I hope to do that. I appreciate you doing that with me. I think this has been I think if anything, super insightful and fun. And you know, I'll look forward to more.
yeah. Well,
Stay in
I
touch.
appreciate all the help you've given me over the years and helped me course correct and wake me up from time to time and
Yeah.
which has been great. So, and I appreciate you having me here to talk today.
Cool. Thank you so much, Peter. I'll put your your info on the description and all that kind of stuff. People can reach you if they
Sounds good.
wanna learn and explore more. Okay.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Have a good one.
You too.